Okay, well, I'd like to welcome everybody tonight to our meeting. Glad you can make it. It's going to be a good one. We have tonight Kinsey Major, who is a postcard librarian with the Newberry Library in Chicago. She's going to talk about what she does and about organizing postcards and all sorts of interesting things that I think everybody will find very useful. Kinsey, if you want to, you can share your screen and you can take right over.
Hello, thank you guys so much. I have been super excited to talk to you guys today. So thank you so much, Michael, for inviting me to give this presentation. My name is Kinsey Major. Like you said, I'm the postcard librarian at the Newberry. And to give you just a little bit of a background on my history here, I've worked at the Newberry for about 3.5 years. I started as a special collections library assistant while I was in my grad program, getting my master's in library science. Been working at the Newberry for about 3.5 years. Started as a special collections library assistant while I was in grad school. And I was very interested as I was working as an assistant here. Something that I had a lot of fun doing was working with postcards, but I never thought that that was going to be where I went with my career. And then when I finished my master's in library science, I started working here as a reference librarian, specifically in our genealogy and local history department. Again, wasn't really thinking about postcards, but was using them a ton with different patrons, still utilizing them a lot, spending my free time looking through postcards, starting to collect my own. Then last year in April, they created the position of a postcard librarian. It was the first one here. We had never had one. Basically, the postcard collection was kind of it was managed by our VP, our Vice President of Collection and Library Services, Will Hansen, who you guys might be familiar with. He is a postcard collector himself, very interested in postcards. He's our curator of Americana and American history as well here. So he was kind of the go-to person for postcards, but along with all of his other duties as vice president and his curating, it was just too much. And so they created the postcard librarian position. And since I've just always really loved working with the postcards here, it felt like a really easy place for my career to go. I wouldn't call myself a postcard historian or even a real big collector, but they are just, I think, a highlight at our library that is underutilized. I really enjoy looking at the postcards and I love what I do. So I'm happy to share that with you guys. But to get started, just to give you guys a little overview of the Newberry, if you don't know, we were founded in 1887. It was because of the will of a gentleman named Walter Loomis Newberry. In his will, he had said that he had two daughters, if both of his daughters did not have any children, he wanted to leave his fortune to starting a library in Chicago. He did pass around like 1860, and then very shortly after, both of his daughters died very young. And so in 1887, when his wife ended up passing, the Newberry was born. We are an independent research library. We are private but open to the public, which is always a fun thing to explain to people. You can come in even though we are private. We are a non-circulating and closed stacks. So what that means is our materials are not out on a shelf, kind of like your normal library. They're not browsable. We keep them all in a storage building, which we call the stacks, which is behind our main library. Climate controlled. We check the humidity. We're thinking about longevity and preserving our materials here. All the materials are kept there. And then whenever you visit the library, you submit requests for what you'd like to see. So you can either do that ahead of time or here with one of our librarians, submit requests for postcards, for books, other ephemera or materials, and then we bring them out of our stacks to view. And then when you're finished, they go straight back. So we run a little different than your normal library. We have over 1.6 million books, 5 million manuscripts, and 600,000 maps. So we have a lot of stuff. It's about 10 floors in our stacks building. It's a lot. And we focus on the humanities generally. I'll go over some of those core collections in just a second. History, literature, art, music, etc. Like I said, we're free, open to the public. One can use our reading rooms as long as they're 14 years or older. You just have to show an ID. It's a very quick, easy process. I took this picture today. This is a diorama we have of our library just to kind of show you. So kind of that main building there, that big, long rectangle. That's going to be kind of our main library. And then to the back left corner, you'll see that square. That's what our Stacks building is. We have a hallway that connects the library to the Stacks building. That's where we hold all of our materials. It was created in like the 70s or 80s, so it's fairly new in the library's history, but those are that's where we keep postcards and all of our collection material. So these are the core collections I was talking about. We have 11 core collections. For all of these 11, we have dedicated curators who select materials for these collection strengths. I always like to point out too, the boundaries for these collections are not very hard. I think a lot of these materials cover a lot of different subjects. Postcards can also be American history. They can be American Indian Indigenous studies. So a lot of these curators work together collaboratively to purchase materials or to pick donations for what we want in our library. I kind of straddle two different kind of departments or areas. I'm both in the manuscripts archives team as well as our reader services, which would cover like the postcards. So to go over kind of generally our postcard collection, we are regarded as the largest public collection of postcards in the United States. The kind of bulk of our collection is going to be the Kurt Teich Company, which I bet most of you are familiar with. Kurt Teich was kind of the powerhouse of producing postcards here in Chicago. We have the company records, correspondence, production files, and the postcards. So we have a lot. The bulk of our postcard collection is going to be that Kurt Teich Company collection. It's over 375,000 unique images that were produced from 1898 to 1978, so a very large range of years. And we have over 100,000 production files, which I think the production files I'll go into a little bit more are very interesting and also very underutilized. Then our postcard collection as well, beyond the Kurt Teich, we do kind of our other strengths include artist signed postcards, exposition postcards, fantasy, Route 66 sports, but that's just scratching the surface. I think our other collections cover a wide variety of subjects, themes, and topics. So a little bit about the Kurt Teich Company records. Those came from Lake County Forest Preserve, or now known as Lake County Discovery Museum. They came in late 2016, early 2017. The total number of items that we got from them was about 2.5 million. So a lot of items. I'm actually working, one of my goals in this position is to update those numbers because those were what we collected when we took the collection. I would assume that we have close to 4 million, 4 million postcards at this point. That's just my own estimation from working with all the collections. But at the time when it arrived, it was 2.5 million items. And beyond the Kurt Teich, they also donated other collections, which I'll kind of go over a little bit. But the bulk of the donation from Lake County Discovery Museum was the Kurt Teich Company records. This is a fun little photo of what we called Teich Town. So when the donation came in from the museum on our first floor in one of our kind of exhibition or kind of flex spaces, this is where the donations lived while they were being processed. As you can see, it's quite chaotic. A lot of miscellaneous boxes. So we took it in and slowly as a team, there were interns and I think everybody in our department kind of chipped in to help process, get these into our Stacks building and available for people to use. You can see now this is how the postcard storage looks. So it looks a lot cleaner, a lot easier to manage. We have these file cabinets, which these came from the museum. So we just kept them in these file cabinets. They roll out. They're a lot easier to get to than just boxes on a shelf, though we do have that. But again, with the Kurt Teich being kind of our largest collection, the most massive, we want them to be easily pageable or easily to grab from our Stacks building. So most of the postcards live in these file cabinets still. They've just been relabeled and reboxed. So I added some pictures of some other examples of how we store the postcard collection. To the left is kind of what I was saying, like are just the boxes on the shelves. These are actually currently being processed. Some have been, some haven't been. I'm working on an inventory currently for some additions to these cards. But as you can see, they're just in boxes. They're stacked. They're a little harder to get to than those rolling out file cabinets, but they're still very easily to page. And to the right, I have an example of some of the albums. We do have some original albums from the Kurt Tike Company, but not a ton of like family albums. But this is an example of, these are the amusement park collection, which I'll talk a little bit about more later. And they came to us in these binders organized by state. So they were organized well when they came to us, so we just kept them in these binders. We continue to monitor to make sure they're still in good condition in this state, but they just live on top of this cabinet and they're easy to find. Here's a couple more examples. I also like to point out, like I was saying, those 10 floors of stacks, the postcards live all over. They live on multiple different floors. This is an example of our cold storage. So some of our more brittle items or some of the ephemera that we have, we keep in the cold storage. So to the left is going to be an example of some boxes of baby cards, baby postcards. They're quite tiny. They're in these little boxes. And I'll show a close-up of that bottom shelf of a printing block that we have. It's the only printing block we do have, but that stays in our cold storage. The middle is of kind of those rollout cabinets of more baby cards. And on the right, some examples of other ephemera we got from the Kurt Tike Company. This is just a close-up of that printing block. I took these photos for a reference inquiry, which I'll talk more about later, but for a reference inquiry that I received about printing blocks. And I'm happy that we have this one example. I wish we had more, but it's very interesting and very heavy. This is an example of our duplicates. We are constantly going through our collection, specifically to the Kurt Tike collection, and weeding them down. There were tons of duplicates, and we keep three, at minimum three of all cards. Though if there's any difference in coloring, writing thing, we keep those. So at minimum, we keep three, sometimes more. But with any of the duplicates, we pull them aside, keep them in this type of storage. So some of them are in large like banker boxes, some are in small postcard boxes, and that's how we store those. I wanted to point out too, in that picture of Tiketown, you can see along the wall, there's all those dark file cabinets. And that's how the production files came to us. They were in these file cabinets, in these kind of brittle brown folders. You can see an example of how they came to us and how we've refolded them, relabeled them, put them into acid-free archival folders, into banker boxes, so that hopefully we can preserve the life of these materials. And I took this picture today of an example of one of our aisles of our production files. So it's a lot. It's a lot of production files, but each of those boxes has hundreds of folders in them. I wanted to point out this example of production files. I think the production files don't get utilized as much. Some of them aren't as rich. Some of them are just the order form with no other materials, no photos, illustrations, anything. But sometimes the production file can be very illuminating, a nice insight into who was ordering these cards, what they were asking for. So I think this is a great example. We have this postcard here of this pool scene. It looks nice, vibrant, well colored, makes you want to go there. It's a very beautiful postcard. And you can see on this order form in the top right-hand corner, you have the production number. You also have who ordered it. You have the title, and in the color description, you can see make a summer scene with bathers in the pool. Interesting. So let's see the photo that they provided. Here is the photo of what it did look like. Definitely looked a little different, not as vibrant. No leaves on the trees. This is probably in the middle of winter, I would assume. Nobody swimming in the pool. The pool actually looks a little drained. Then you can see with the overlay where an illustrator, an artist has gone in and filled in the trees, put people in the pool, illustrated people in the pool, added grass, and then that's how you get the beautiful card. So I always think the production files are very interesting. You can kind of see what people were ordering, what they were working off of to create these cards. Because I think on face value, you would just see the card and you would think that it was taken from a photo. Nothing was changed, nothing was altered. Maybe it was just colored in, and you can see that that was not the case. Other collections I wanted to highlight too beyond our Tyke collection, and this is just a scratch of the surface. We have our Bill Lindy collection of tall tale postcards. That's one of my personal favorite. I love the tall tale cards. You can see an example in the bottom middle of what they're calling a Yukon mosquito. It's a larger than life mosquito attacking a gentleman on the ground. I always think these are really fun. I always point to these two for patrons who are coming in who just want to see a cool postcard. You know, they're not a collector. They're just interested in seeing something interesting or fun. I always use these. We also have the Clara Falls postcard collection. This is actually a newer acquisition. I believe it came in last year. And Clara Falls was a woman. She attended the Sac Fox Indian School near Strode, Oklahoma. And a lot of these postcards or most of these postcards are picture postcards, and they depict images of the members of the Sac and Fox Nation. This is where I think postcards kind of overlap with genealogy and local history as well. They can be good uses of showing people history, showing communities that are lost. We've been able to reach out to different tribal members and other community members who have actually identified people who are in these postcards. So they can be really illuminating beyond just their value as a postcard or their value as a picture. They have more value than just that. And I think they're very important, especially for genealogy and local history and just community history. I have an example of one that I really love in the top right-hand corner of these two gentlemen in the back of this like little train car. They're posed, but I really like it. I think it's a really interesting photo postcard. It almost kind of reminds me too of the tall tale postcards with this drawn little back of the train car. We also have the John Monroe collection of sports postcards. I also really love this one. I'm not much of a sporty person necessarily, but the sports definitely extends beyond. I have this example in the bottom right-hand corner. I personally play a lot of pool, and there's a large collection of billiards and pool postcards. Some are quite funny. Those are also, I think, just a really great entry-level postcard for a lot of our patrons who, again, are just coming in and want to see something interesting or cool. I can kind of interview them and ask them what they're into. Oh, maybe they like football, maybe they like basketball. And the sports postcards can be a really easy way to get people involved and interested in postcards in a new way that's a little less intimidating. And then lastly, another collection that is kind of relevant with the centennial of Route 66 this year. We have the James Powell Route 66 postcard collection. I have an example in the bottom left-hand corner. I think it's a good example too. Our postcards are either written on or not. We don't organize them in that way, but some are written on and some are not. And this is a great example of one that has been written on, has been used, and has been donated. And our Route 66 cards actually just processed some additions to this collection. They've all been digitized as well. All of these that I'm showing have been digitized and can be found on our website, which I'll show you later. So you can use them, download them. I think they're just good other collections. So a little bit about what I do. I always like to say I kind of have my fingers in a lot of different pies, especially just with my experience here at the Newberry, working kind of in different roles in different departments. I kind of straddle a lot. Like I said too, I have one foot in our modern manuscripts department, and I also have one foot in our reader services, which is kind of just like our general like library department. I kind of do a little bit of everything. So mainly my day-to-day is going to be those reference inquiries, which are over email, phone, also in-person reference interviewing. So we have a reference desk on our second floor in our general reading room. A lot of my day-to-day is just answering questions about the postcard collection, getting people excited, like I was saying, like asking people, what are you interested in? And kind of tailoring my suggestions to them based on what they're interested in, or just pulling them some postcards that I think are cool. So that's kind of my day-to-day. That also extends into this postcard research assistant. We have fellows who come in who are writing dissertations. working on their PhD or other projects, books. And so I also help with some just general research assistant, getting them into our catalog, getting them situated with how our catalog works, and kind of tailoring that search a little bit more direct to their needs. I get a lot of questions about copyright and reproduction, which I'll go into in a second. I'd say that comes up a lot with these inquiries. I do a little bit of arranging and processing collections, but it doesn't all fall on me. That is kind of also a more library-wide ordeal. We have a collection services department that does ordering, that does labeling. We have our conservation department, which does boxing, making sure if things are fragile or breaking, they repair them or they put them into sleeves to prolong how long they can be seen by people, by the public. And so the arranging and processing is kind of done by a lot of different characters, but I do a little bit of that. A lot of the smaller donations, family collections, I work on those, or any additions that need to be added to existing collections, I do those as well. I also do collection presentations, kind of like what I'm doing right now, but in person. I also help with updating and maintaining research guides, making sure that people can find our postcards and request them or from home or from anywhere. I also do trainings and volunteers. So anytime a new library assistant starts, I do trainings with them. And I also do have a volunteer that works on a project, the duping project. I do their training and oversee that project. I was saying this is what we call our dupe project, which I was saying looking through every single box of the Kurt Tyke collection, seeing if there are too many, weeding it down, finding the ones that we want to keep, and then putting the others in a storage box. So this is a really good example of one of the copyright inquiries that I get. So in the top right-hand corner, I have a picture it's a contemporary rock band. Their name is Portugal the Man. And last fall, their lawyer reached out to our library and said that they wanted to use a postcard that they had found on the internet for their album cover. They didn't find that photo of the postcard from us directly, but they had found, I think it was on eBay, they found a picture of the postcard. It was a little grainy though, so they did want us to take a photo of it, send it to them. So I've added on the left-hand side the catalog record for the postcard, along with the album cover on the right. And as you can see under the rights, this is kind of our general catch-all copyright policy for Kurt Tyke, that there is no known copyright for the Kurt Tyke postcards printed before 1964. So usually if people send me an email about wanting to use a postcard, if it's dated before 1964, I usually generally say that that's a safe use. I never try to give people a 100% yes or no, but generally that's going to be safe, especially if there's no photographer name, there's no other kind of copyright on the card. I would deem that safe to use. But as you can see, that third object down, it says date and it says 1966. So it's 2 years over the copyright, and I included a picture of the actual card in our collection. And in the top right-hand corner, you can see that on the back of the card, it says photo by William W. Bacon. So since there was a photographer name on the card and it was 2 years after, I looked online to see if this photographer was either still alive or had a collection, had donated their own photography, their negatives to another institution. And I did find that at the University of Alaska in Anchorage, they do have a William Bacon collection of photographs. So reached out to them, let them know what this band wanted to use it for. They said that it was totally fine and gave them the go-ahead to use the photo for the album cover. So a lot of the time, if there is these other copyrights or photographer names, you can reach out to other institutions, and I'm always happy to do that facilitating for people so that they can use the image that they'd like. Another example of an inquiry I got, this one was really fun. This one was around the end of the year last year, was for the band The Eagles. And it came in as an email on a Wednesday afternoon, urgent, from the Eagles production team saying that by Friday they needed 30 postcards at the highest resolution we could give them for their residency at the Sphere. So very exciting. Found the postcards for them, got them photographed. We have a digital initiatives department. We have a photographer on staff, and she was able to take all the photos of all the large letter postcards, send them over. As you can see on the big screen, all the different Kurt Teich large letter postcards. So that one was a very fun one. And this one, didn't actually come in as an inquiry, but this is kind of, I think, a good example of also in just my personal day-to-day life, how the postcards have kind of inspired me. And this was, I was at a local bar here in Chicago in my neighborhood, actually the second oldest bar in Chicago, called the Chip Inn. They were promoting this liqueur that it has newly been produced in the last couple years. And they were selling it as like, this is the Chicago historic liqueur that the Ladner brothers were making in like the 50s, 60s, 70s. When they went out of business, they stopped producing it. And this alcohol distributor, this alcohol company decided to pick it back up, start making it again. I thought that was really interesting and really cool. When I came to work the next day, I wonder if we have a postcard. And we did have a postcard. Along with the postcard, we had a production file. Again, I love the production files. I think they're great. So I looked at the production file and I saw the mock-up of the card. As you can see, we have on the left-hand side kind of the final draft of that postcard. On the top right, you can see the mock-up with the notes for what they want to say, how they want it written in the card. And in the production file as well, it had the original photographs that they used for the postcard. And so I scanned the entire production file, sent it over to the liquor company. It's called Cohasset. I sent it to the Cohasset Punch people. And I just said, hey, I think this is really interesting. I work at the Newberry. I tried your drink last night and I just thought you guys would think it was interesting. I emailed back. They were really appreciative of me sending that over, and they had never seen this before. They'd never thought to look at postcards for marketing material or for inspiration. They ended up using the photograph in the bottom right-hand corner of that cocktail for marketing, for advertisements, and they posted it on social media. So I think that's another good example. Even beyond kind of my day-to-day, I'm always thinking about how to connect people, connect businesses, and connect the history using these postcards. To kind of go over how we organize them, this is a question I get a lot. There's no really great catch-all answer for it. I think a great way to describe how we organize our postcards here is we do them in whatever way feels best for the collection itself. So I kind of gave two examples here. So on the left-hand side, we have those amusement park postcards that I was talking about earlier. As you can see, the full extent, it's 10,000 postcards, so a lot, in 18 boxes and in 31 volumes, or those binders that were on top of the cabinets. You can also see that it says identification note, that they've been numbered. So every postcard will have a number, AP1 or AP2. So all of them have been numbered. All of them have a specific box that they need to be in. Whenever that collection came in, we actually got it from, like I was saying, Lake County. That's how they had it. They had it numbered. They had them in this pattern. We just kept it that way. It was working. It does work. No need to change it. Then in the bottom right-hand corner, the Richard Vesley postcard collection. This is one that came in, I think, 2 weeks after I started in this position. So it was the first one I was working on. And it's just a very small collection donated by a gentleman named Richard Vesley. His father he worked as an anthropologist at the Field Museum here in Chicago. He did a lot of traveling for work, picked up postcards wherever he was at. I think they're a good representation of just general travel, which also kind of harkens back to one of our 11 core collections, which is maps, travel, and ephemera. It was kind of a no-brainer for us to take it, but since it's so small, it barely filled one box. It was one box in one folder. There was one oversized card that needed to be in a folder. There was no need to necessarily number them or organize them in any more way just because it is just one box and it is just a few cards. I always like to point out too that this collection is really fun. As you can see in the content description, it has postcards of cats, photograph postcards, postcards of taxidermied animals. There are miniature bird postcards, and then there are some squeaker postcards. So it is just kind of a grab bag of cards. Most of them are written on, though, from Richard Vesley's father. So how we organize it is really dependent upon how it most makes sense for that collection. How is it going to be easily accessible for people to manage looking through them? With these two examples, is it worth numbering them and having them in these multiple different boxes, or is it worth just putting them in one box, having them be kind of more discoverable? And then I have a bunch of different links and information about different ways you can kind of interact with our postcard collection from not being here in the library. We do have, like I was saying, that research guide that I update and work on. It covers basically our entire postcard collection, the history of it. There are dating guides on there. There are reproduction policy is on there. So it has that copyright, and it also has more information about using images, reproducing images, postcards. It also has information about donating, which I'll go into a little bit further later. But the research guide is kind of the main hub for postcard information at the Newberry Library. This is Kurt Tyke catalog. So how you find the Kurt Tyke cards is through this specific catalog. This was something, again, that we adopted from Lake County. They already had this set up. This is how they had it. Instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, we just kept it. Anytime you want to look at a Kurt Tyke postcard, this is where you look for it. You can browse by subject, location, decade. So there's a little bit more of just browsability here, but if you do have a production number that you are looking for, you can type that straight into the search bar and it will pop up. You can also search, keyword search as normal. This will have all of our Kurt Tyke postcards on it. This would be where you would go to find them. And then this is our digital collections. So anything we have digitized is going to live here on our digital collections page. I always point out that the fastest way to find the postcards is when you're on this web page, you scroll a little bit down and there's a box that says postcards. When you click on that, it takes you directly to every single postcard we have digitized. So it's just the fastest way to find all of our postcards. And then from there, you can search within the postcard collection on our digital collections site. I think something that's really exciting to point out is that around the fall, winter, I had looked on there, had 70,000 postcards digitized. It's definitely not even close to our full amount of postcards, but our digital services team is constantly working on digitizing materials and uploading them. I looked at it today and we are over 85,000. So in a few months, we've done 15,000 more cards. So there is definitely a big push to get these cards digitized so that you don't have to be in person to view them. They can be accessed anywhere. This one's just fun. I love our postcard sender. We choose a few themes, we rotate them, and it's just a really fun way to send people postcards easily without having to download images. It's kind of, you send a postcard through the mail. I love doing that, but this is just a fast, easy digital way to send cards. You can send it as an email, a text message. You can add a message in there. I think our postcard sender is a fun way to just be involved. We switch the themes all the time, and it's a fun way to just find a new card. You don't even have to be thinking about a certain subject or anything, and you can just find one very easily. If you want to be involved, we do have have what we call our postcard tag, and this is kind of a crowdsourced, volunteer-based project that we ask the public to help us with. It's just all of our postcards that are lacking metadata. So they're lacking transcription of notes on the cards, lacking decks. This one, you might call this one tennis or two women playing tennis with envelopes. It's not super strict. You just look at a card, it populates a card, a random card we need metadata for, and you fill out what you see. As you can see, 74% complete, so we're getting closer, but we still need help tagging those postcards, getting that metadata in. And I always find that it's a fun way to just pass 30 minutes if I want a little fun task to do. And then just to kind of in talking about donating to the Newberry, if you're ever interested in donating cards to us, the person to talk to, like I said, is Will Hansen. He's our Vice President of Collection and Library Services. He's also the curator for American History and Americana. So he does the donation and the purchasing, or you can email just collecting@newberry.org. This goes to all the curators and kind of whoever makes the most sense. It would probably be Will, but it could be Will and another curator could look at it and see whether or not it would fit within our collection. Some questions to kind of answer when you do that email. Is it for donation or sale? Description of the collection, like how many? Is it in boxes? If you can figure out the linear feet, how many linear feet? I always say if you can send photos, send photos. That's always super helpful. And then the condition, have they been written on? Are they in an album? Are they pristine? All that kind of stuff. Then usually after that kind of initial contact is made, the conversation about deed of gift and IRS tax information gets discussed. And then just generally, what are we looking for? We do have our collection development policy on our website. It's updated here and there, but it is up to date. So if you wanted to know specifics about our collection development policy, you can find it there. But generally, postcards that illustrate a significant history of production, use of postcards as a medium of communication or advertising around a specific topic, location, printing company, or technique. I think another good example of the sports postcards, they were very specific to a theme. And then focus on collections that relate to our specialized subject areas. So those 11 core collections that I was talking about. Also, specific topics like Chicago and the Midwest, definitely heavy on real photo postcards, Indigenous peoples, kind of like that Clara Falls collection I was telling you about, innovative use of formats, social movements, maps, cartography, all that kind of stuff. Then just generally what we're not looking. So in a general sense, I think the Richard Vesley kind of does fall under this first bullet point, but it was small. Our modern manuscripts curator was interested in it, so we took it in, especially given the history of Richard Vesley's father working at the Field Museum here in Chicago. I think it kind of made an exception, but miscellaneous accumulations of family travel, we just have a lot of that. Incomplete sets, type postcards, we have a lot of them. There are exceptions. We do have some that are missing. We don't have a full complete run, but that is a little few far between really large collections. We are kind of generally, like any institution or library, always running out of space. So any way we can make up space, we look to do it. So if it's extremely large, we just can't take it on, unfortunately. And then postcards that are pasted into albums, like glued into albums. Just in terms of like conservation considerations, we just try to not do those. And that is all I have for you guys. I am happy to take questions. And I also added my email there. Always feel free to email me or email just the Newberry in general. Happy to take questions.
Kinsey, that was very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a question. I know obviously you don't know all these things in your head, but I'm just curious. You mentioned a collection of amusement park
Mhm.
postcards. You wouldn't know if you had any from Joyland amusement park that was in Wichita.
Ooh, I don't know off the top of my
Oh,
head, but I am going to write that down. And
we have a connection. We have a connection to that here tonight in our club.
you said Joyland, where was that? Wichita?
Joyland, Wichita, Kansas. Hey
Yeah,
Hal, are you familiar with that postcard collection of the amusement parks? Maybe you can turn off your screen share.
oh, I can do
I
that.
don't know if that'll
Let's see.
help here. Hal, you're muted. Anyway, Hal's family owned that amusement park.
Oh, wow, that's
back
really
in the
cool.
day in Wichita.
Being always busy.
Anybody have any questions? Just unmute yourself and go right ahead.
Hi, I asked a question on the chat. I too am interested in amusement parks. I was wondering if your collection in the albums, according to state, has been digitized.
The amusement parks has not been fully digitized. Some of them have. Just anytime we've gotten any sort of inquiry, like I was talking about for digitization, if we do digitize it, we just throw it onto our digital collections. We want it to be available, but the collection as a whole is not digitized. I think they were just waiting on a few more albums. It is close, but it is not fully digitized.
So how would I find some if I came in there, just the ones that have been?
I will look into that and I could always email you. There should be a way to format it. I would assume that if they're uploading them, they will be tagging the collection name, and so it should be able to be filtered through. Usually, there's filters on the left-hand screen of our digital collections where you can pick different collections, you can pick dates, and so it should pop up on that side. I don't know if they've made that public though. I can check and I can email.
Okay, I'll put my email in there.
Perfect. Thank
Thank
you.
you. I'm Nancy. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
So, hi, I'm Jackie, and I am also a librarian, and I've been collecting postcards for 62 years. My question is, it's my personal collection, but I do work with digital collections of ephemera. So
Mhm.
what platform, and this is the geeky librarian side of me, but what platform are you using?
We're using Cortex. The digital collection side of it, I try to stay a little out of just
Okay.
because we do have within our digital initiatives department, we have a digital assets librarian. We've got a bunch of people and they do a lot of the coding and the back end. And so I kind of jump in on like the low level metadata and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But like Orange Logic, Cortex, and Archive Space, we use a
Yeah,
couple
I know.
different ones.
Because we're migrating out of content DM, checking each one of those. Anyway, that
Yeah.
that was okay. Back to being a postcard collector. Just love all the images. My stuff is mostly Chrome, but all right.
Yeah, very
Thank you.
cool. Of course.
Somebody had a
I've
question
got a
about,
couple questions for you. If one of us walked in tomorrow to the Newbury and said, here's a check for $100,000 in support of the postcard collection, what would you spend it on?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Oh, wow. I don't know, actually. I think, again, that would be more my colleague Will Hansen, who does all the purchasing and kind of higher level management of the postcard collection, kind of just generally collection and library services. If I had to just guess off the top of my head, we would probably pull that into like maybe an intern or another librarian who could work on processing. I didn't go into it too much, but I think a lot of my job, it's been kind of ramping up more as I've been in this position long enough. There are all these kind of legacy projects that were, since they weren't high priority, were kind of pushed towards the back when they came in, and kind of these more exciting or more interesting collections were kind of pushed towards the front to get digitized, to get numbered, so that the public could interact with them. But there are tons of collections that have still not been fully processed. They've been halfway or not at all processed. That's constantly something I'm like working on. As things kind of come in, it just kind of depends on where it gets put on the priority. So I think if I had to guess, probably an intern or some sort of other staff member, because as of right now, I'm kind of the only person working on this on a day-to-day basis. People jump in and help me, like I said, volunteers, other library assistants, but all of us kind of have our hands in 20 different pies here. So there's no one really to help me dedicated. That would be off the top of my head, probably how some money would be used, but Will Hanson would know more about how we could use that.
Okay. Question about the Eagles and the large format or the large letter postcards. Was there a charge for that service to them?
Yes, yes. So for our digitization, we usually, if it's just a PDF scan, like a kind of low level PDF scan, it's 20 cents per image. Pretty low, but for those high resolution scans, they're $20 a scan. So whatever 20 times like 30 is, I can't do fast math. It was a lot. It was a good good amount of money. And because it was a rush order, there's also an additional fee that I don't know off the top of my head that our photographer sets for rush orders. So they did pay for that.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Good, Clarissa.
I have two questions.
Mhm.
The first one is very librarian, like you say, like Jackie said. How you decide what are the fields for metadata for a postcard? How you describe it?
Sorry, say that one more time.
What to describe a postcard? What are the fields that needs to be a title? Okay, and then what?
Our metadata are fields that we usually fill in if we know date, location, title, subject matter. Usually there's some sort of like provenance, like if it was a gift, if it was a purchase, where it came from. I think those are our basic main fields that we fill out. And I'm on a few different committees that talk about whether or not we should extend that or if we should pare it down, how much information is too much information for people. So we don't organize them by, like, for example, like production style. So we don't tag all the postcards that are linen postcards together. There are a ton of things that we just don't fill out or fields that we don't focus on, but our main ones are just subject, date, location, and usually like a descriptor or a title.
You keep on publishers and
If there is a publisher name on it, that usually goes in there as well. Not all of them have publisher information on them.
And my second question, are you interested or would you be interested on a database of all the COVID postcards, over 2,000 that were published during our COVID pandemics?
That's really interesting.
So we have a database, and then I will eventually, if interested, donate in my part of the collection, but it's only half of it. The other half is in England, and I doubt he will transfer it to you. But something like that, will you be interested to keep the database, even if it's larger than actually the collection in your possession?
I think that's something that they would be interested in. Absolutely. I always say when people talk about donating postcards or databases or information, I always say it's worth reaching out. I've been surprised by things that people have wanted to donate that I thought maybe we wouldn't go for, and then we do. I always say it's worth reaching out because they'll give you information about whether they do want it or if they don't want it, why they don't want it, like where the concerns lie for keeping it here.
Okay, thank you.
We had a question in the chat from Sherry asking about storing postcards, whether it's better to store them in boxes or binders, plastic sheets or plastic sleeves, or can you talk a little bit about how you store them?
Absolutely. So we tend to do boxes with no sleeve. Even if they come to us in a sleeve, I'm actually working on some additions to our John Monroe collection, and all of them are in sleeves. We're taking all of them out. We find that the sleeve, especially for digitizing or if they're in good condition, you just don't need it. This idea of like kind of the white glove service of special collections, we don't require any gloves. We find that it's better that you have like the tactile, you're less likely to injure an item if you can actually feel it. We tend to not do sleeves. However, if it is in really bad condition or if it's already in a binder, that's when our kind of conservation team steps in and makes the decision on whether or not they think it should be rehoused, if it should be taken out of a binder, if it should be kept in. But kind of as a general catch-all, it's usually just in a box with no sleeve.
You mentioned a cold storage. What temperature is that at?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know roughly, I would say it's somewhere between 55 and like 65. It's not super cold. It is a little chilly though.
You also showed early on the printing blocks that you said were heavy. Are those like plates that they were printed from, or what exactly is a printing block? I know they were 4 up.
I'm not too well versed in like printing technique, but from my general understanding, you had the block, which then would be covered in an ink, and then the big piece of like paper would be put on top and it would be rolled over it, and then the ink would come up onto the paper as like kind of a relief.
Okay, looks like a plate kind of. Any other questions, anybody?
I have one.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just wondering, like, we're always trying to think of new audiences for postcards and new people to recruit into collecting and into our clubs. One that always occurs to me being in a university community is academics. And I'm just wondering, like, how much usage do you get from academics of the collection? What types of departments are they from? Are they surprised by what's there? Like, it seems like there's such a gold mine of information that just is not getting used in and that could be. And I'm just wondering, in your experience, do you find a lot of academics using your collection?
Not as many, I agree with you, not as many as I think should be. I think it absolutely is a gold mine of information, history. We actually do have a fellow right now who is writing about, I don't know exactly like the full extent of his research project, but finding examples, instances of Black joy and like Black everyday life through these postcards. I think there's definitely, we have some in our collection that are quite graphic of lynchings, of horribly racist cards, blackface. And I think that those are always really highlighted within postcard collections. But he was trying to take the angle of like, let's find like Black joy and Black everyday life and more positive examples of Black life in the middle of the 20th century. And people, I think, and he's going through I'm really interested to talk to him at the very end of all of this. He's going through every single Kurt Tyke postcard we have. So he's been here for 2 or 3 months and he's going one by one through every single card to find them because we don't have them organized or tagged in such a way. So it's tiring, but I've seen just in my couple years here, 3 years here, when academics come in, they're working on presentations or working on publishing a book or anything. A lot of the time I've gotten asked about postcards for even just for books and for articles and blog posts and all sorts of things. So I think that they're definitely underutilized, I think too, as just like graphics for publication generally.
It's one other short question, which I hope is okay to ask.
Mhm.
What, like, I always wonder with respect to possibly donating my own collection, well, they're very small and some of them are worth quite a lot. How do you deal with the potential of theft, or do you have to identify cards that actually have quite a substantial value and do something different with them, or is that an issue at all?
So theft, there has been theft at the Newberry before, but we do have a security team here. And that's why when you do come in, and I say we're private but open to the public, a lot of the kind of energy and fear when I work down on the first floor where we give out cards, a lot of people walk in, there's a security guard, there's a gate. You can't come up the stairs unless you do have a reader's card. You can't bring a backpack. You can't bring a coat. There are all these rules to keep our collection safe that people agree to when they sign up for that reader's card. And when they come out, and even me as an employee here, I can't bring a bag upstairs. I can't bring my own coat upstairs. They check if you do bring a bag, they check your bag. They look at laptop cases. So we're very proactive in making sure that postcards or any materials don't get stolen here. We have cameras. Part of the reading room is that we are always watching people and making sure people aren't doing anything, but it's not a huge issue here. I've heard stories, it was before my time here, of people stealing maps specifically, but we don't separate out necessarily anything that's super high value. All of the postcards are in our special collections, which is in a separate room than our general reading room. So it is also kind of like sequestered off from kind of the general space. We don't keep the super high value items like even more separate, if that makes sense.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Generally, you like postcards to be in very nice condition, but related to the gentleman working on the Black Joy is I've bought some postcards of just everyday people, the African Americans who, and in portraits or whatever. Sometimes the cards are beat up, but it actually seems to, in those cases, it seems to enhance the card, or you just think a little bit more about what this card has been through. It adds to the charm.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree with that. Like seeing that they're worn means that they were well loved and used. They weren't just sitting on a shelf somewhere. I would agree with that.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question? If not, we'll end. Thank you
Tell
very
you what
much.
I got. maybe one.
Oh, go ahead.
Real quick. I will probably be reaching out to you for this. But actually, it's probably not critical that I ask now. Do all the cards have